It's okay. You can admit it. Sometimes motherhood seems less like the sweetness of a Pampers commercial and more like a scene out of Jaws. Hey mamas, I'm Kendra Hennessy, mom of 2 spunky kids of my own, and after 10 years in the motherhood game and owning a house cleaning business, I discovered that moms need more than just a clean home. They need encouragement, support, and the permission to be, as I like to say, just a little bit homemakerish. I'm on a mission to give the reluctant homemakers of the world the tools, the strategies, and the systems that will help you simplify your life and put some fun back into being a mom. Modern homemaking doesn't have to be unpleasant or even something you dread. We're going to have the conversations that will help you uncomplicate motherhood and embrace home management without the perfection. This is a sanctimommy-free territory. This is a place where moms can be themselves. This is the Mother Like a Boss podcast. The Mother Like a Boss podcast is on vacation for a little bit this summer, and so you won't hear any new episodes from us until about mid-August. But that does not mean that we're not still putting out content for you to listen to. I've handpicked some of our best of episodes, just like we did last year. And so today's episode is the best of how to create your home's culture and why it's important. This episode was very popular when it came out, and it's something that I reference quite a bit in my course, Homemaker Issue. Actually, that's really one of the main pillars of what Homemaker Issue is all about. It's kind of creating the culture of your home, much the same way that you would if you owned a company. And so this is something that gets referenced back, especially with raising kids and chores and delegation and creating routines and all the good stuff that goes along with running a home. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode about creating your home's culture and why it's so important. And we'll catch you back here in mid-August for some brand new episodes. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the Mother Like a Boss podcast. I'm Kendra Hennessy, your host. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that you have a ton of different options of things that you can listen to and watch and read, and I'm just so thankful that you chose to spend your time with me today. So, couple of things before we get started. Number one, you may hear a sound in the background. I don't know if it sounds worrying or maybe you don't hear it at all. I have the air conditioner going. Normally I don't when I'm recording, but it's really, really hot and humid where and when I'm recording. And it's more important to me that I don't keel over of heat exhaustion than to make sure that I don't have some maybe worrying sound in the background. So before anyone emails me or messages or leaves some kind of review telling me that they can hear something in the background, we usually don't have that. I usually keep the air conditioner on before I record and then turn it off, but it's just too hot and sticky today. So we're all just going to have to deal and recognize the imperfection of this, just like I talk about in motherhood, okay? Number 2, this is going to be a deep dive episode. This is going to be us talking about deeper issues, not the surface level, vanilla, rah-rah motivation that sometimes happens when it comes to motherhood. Instead, I want to dive a little deeper into this topic, and it's going to take some looking in the mirror and taking responsibility for ourselves. And that can be very triggering. I can actually already hear some of the feathers ruffling, and I love that sound. It's one of my favorite sounds because when feathers are ruffling, it means that change is near if you are ready for it. So if you're not someone that's ready to take responsibility with what's going on in your home, if you're still in a place of blaming your spouse, blaming your children, blaming your upbringing, blaming your surroundings, then perhaps this isn't for you right now and you can come back to it later. But I'm not going to hold back because this topic right here, this belief has changed the way that I look at running my home. It has changed my life as a mom, and it's changed my home, and it's really helped us to do a complete 180 because I'm no longer focusing on all of the minutia day to day and figuring out how to solve problems that aren't really problems. Instead, I'm looking at this 10,000 foot view, like I'm looking through that lens and seeing what can we change from up here that's going to trickle down to everything else that goes on in our home? Okay, so today we are talking about how to create your home's culture and why that's so important. Now, you may be wondering, what does that even mean, Kendra? I don't understand why I would have to create culture in my home. But here's what the definition of culture is. It's the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or social group. And guess what? Your home is a people. It's a social group. Now, there may be somebody listening who is a single person and they're living alone, but this is the Mother Like a Boss podcast. So we're usually talking about people that are all living together. You may be a mom whose kids have grown up and moved out. This can still work for you. It's just going to be much easier because you can create the culture on your own, just for yourself, not including anyone else, right? So your home with the people living in it are a social group. It's a group of people all with different personalities and different thoughts and different opinions. Even though we're raising our children in the same home, they're unique people and they have their own ideas, and that's okay. They have free will. So if it's difficult for you to grasp what this means, I have an analogy that actually works much easier, because I think people tend to understand this, where culture is created a little bit easier in the workplace than in the home. So I often go back to what you would do in a workplace, because if you can figure that out, then you can bring it into your home. And most people just don't realize that. They run their homes differently than a business would run. And honestly, the way I run my business is the way I run my home, and vice versa. And the moment that I recognized that doing both of those the same way was going to get me a lot more success is the moment that I stopped stressing over all of the tiny little things, okay? So if you've ever worked in your life, which I would guess all of you have, you've been in some kind of workplace. Maybe that was a restaurant, maybe that was retail, maybe it was corporate, maybe it was working in a small business. Whatever it was, you had a workplace. And there is such thing as workplace culture, right? Which is basically the character and personality of that organization. Now, I can tell you, because I have had different workplaces throughout my life, especially throughout my teenage years. I worked in restaurants and pizzerias. I worked in retail. I worked for a company that did games for like corporate parties and stuff from the time I was 14. So I've worked in a lot of different places, and I've experienced many different workplace cultures. And so when you think back on those, or maybe you're going through it right now, I want you to think of the workplace culture that you had or have now. Was it hostile, or was it really fun and embracing and joyful and happy? Was it toxic? Did it breed toxicity? Was it valueless, or did they have clear-cut values that all of their employees had to maintain and live up to or work up to? Did they encourage poor behavior, or did they discipline poor behavior? And did they encourage instead really good behavior? That is all a part of the culture. It's that character and the personality, and it's what they will tolerate and what they will not tolerate. So here's a really good example. In my workplace, the workplace that I've created through Mother Like a Boss, I have a workplace culture that I've created for my employees and my contractors that is filled with respect, responsibility, open communication, no judgment. We don't judge one another. We don't judge our audience. We don't judge people that are emailing or asking for help. We don't even judge those that are criticizing us, because we recognize that they're coming from a specific place, and judgment of them is not going to help them or us. So we have, I'm not going to get all down the list of our values, but really, your culture is made up not only of the character and personality, but also of the values and the priorities and what you hold true for yourself. The same goes for your home. So the same kind of character and personality that we'd have for an organization is the same thing that you can do for your own home. So now in my own home, for example, I'm going to give you some examples of what we have decided is our culture in our house. Communication. Everyone can speak, but everyone must listen. So here's the thing with communication. And, I don't mean to call all of us moms out and wives out, but I'm gonna. A lot of times women will come into my Facebook groups, either attached to Homemaker Issue or my free Facebook group, and there's a lot of blaming going on. I ask my husband to do XYZ and he doesn't do it. my husband doesn't help, my husband doesn't this, my husband doesn't that, my kids don't this, my kids don't that. There's a lot of blaming going on. Now, sometimes it may be completely true, but I always tell people I'm only hearing one side of the story. There may be a whole other side of the story that we don't know about, because it doesn't matter how flat you make a pancake, there's always two sides. One of my favorite Dr. Phil quotes. Okay. So the other thing that happens is that when I press a little bit, or when other members of that group press a little bit, what we find is that a lot of times people say they're communicating, but what they really mean is that they're talking. Communication is not about talking. Communication is about speaking and listening. It is about making yourself heard in a way that someone else can hear you, and listening to what other people have to say. And that is the missing component of communication that so many families are missing. We are missing the component where we are open to listening to our children, open to listening to our spouse, open to listening to ourselves when our inner self, when our inner voice is screaming and we're just not willing to listen because our ego is running amok and trying to run the show. So in our home, the culture, part of the culture we've created, is of open communication. Everyone is allowed to speak. Everyone is allowed to have an opinion. Everyone is allowed to have a voice, but everyone also must listen, meaning that if my son communicates to me that he doesn't want to pick up his room, he's allowed to do that. I'm not going to shut him down and say, too bad, who cares? I don't care. You have to do it because I said so. I'm the adult. We've kind of cut that out a lot, but instead he has to listen to me. And then what the listening entails is that in this house, having a clean room is an important value because it keeps our things safe. It keeps us safe. It keeps us from tripping over things. It keeps our stuff from getting broken. It makes things easy to find. I'm not going to go into that right now, but all of those things are important. And so we've just fostered an open communication. Now, I'm going to preface this because I know somebody out there is listening thinking like, oh, so like we should just let our kids make the rules. No, that's not it at all, because I'm the CEO of my company. Just because we have an open communication in my company and Mother Like a Boss doesn't mean that I don't still make the rules. It doesn't mean that I don't still call the shots. I do, but I'm open to listening to what other people have to say, because oftentimes people have a better way of doing things than I do, and I want to be open to that. I also want my children to understand how to communicate properly. And so communication is a huge part of our culture. Mutual respect is as well. And notice that I said mutual respect. Yet again, I have to say that the reason that we completely cut out any what I call husband bashing in my free Facebook group is there is enough of that on the internet. Now, your husband or the person's husband who they're bashing may be like a total jerk. He may be. He may do all of the things you're saying and worse. He may be a tool. I don't know because I don't know him and nobody else does. We're just hearing one side of the story. However, I always look at it like this. My marriage is very important to me. And I really would feel horrible if I knew that my husband was going into Facebook groups with complete strangers and complaining about me. Just complaining, telling all the things that I do wrong and all the things that he does right. So I'm not going to do that to my husband. That is mutual respect to me. Now, that also goes down to my children. I want to teach them respect. So we have certain ways that we parent that we feel are about mutual respect. Now, again, that does not mean that the kids just get to run amok and do whatever they want, because that's not respectful. It's not respectful of the rules. It's not respectful of the home. It's not respectful of other people. So it's just about there being a mutual respect there. Forgiveness is another huge part of the culture that we've created. Forgiveness of oneself and forgiveness of others. I ask for forgiveness of my children. When I do something wrong, I apologize. And I have learned this over the years from years of maybe not doing it and always having that need to be right, which comes from the ego. I need to be right and I can't let anyone see that I'm wrong. But now I recognize that if I scream or yell when I shouldn't have, or when I've done something that I feel was not up to what the culture of our home and what our values are, or wasn't respectful, then I ask for forgiveness. Listen, mommy is really sorry that I did XYZ, and I would love if you would forgive me for that. Just asking that forgiveness then shows them that they can be open with asking for forgiveness as well. Again, just a culture we've created. We also value learning, continuous learning and relearning. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail because that's how we learn. And one of the biggest things that I value not only in my home, but in my business, no one is exempt from any job. So this is really why I wanted to do this episode, is because the number one thing that comes up when it comes to running a home for moms is that nobody helps. No one helps. Well, first of all, that's garbage because it's a mindset. If you keep saying no one helps, you will continually perpetuate the no one helps mentality. You can go to motherlikeaboss.com/podcast directory and get some other episodes I've done about how I allow my kids or get my kids to do chores without nagging. There was a Q&A about that. We have some parenting episodes. Go check that out because I have a lot more to say on that. But in our home, no one's exempt from a job, meaning that I can do a job and my kids can do a job and my husband can do a job. Mopping the floor is not a woman's work. Making food, not a woman's work in our house. Doing things outside, not just a man's work. Now, we have delegated things in our home just because that's the way it falls. Like, listen, I don't like mowing the lawn. I don't care about mowing the lawn. So my husband does it because he's really good at it and he knows how. But if he couldn't for some reason, then I would do it. I'm not doing it because I say, well, that's not my job to do. Instead, we've just delegated the jobs, but no one is exempt from it. So no one is exempt from helping out. No one is exempt from pitching in. No one is exempt from having to see a mess and clean it up or clean a mess when they're asked. It's just not something that is a part of our culture the same way in my business. So yes, I have people working for me, but I have a sister who works full time for me who's going to be going on maternity leave for a while. Now, I got someone to come in to help out during that time, but I know that there may be things that myself or our creative director need to pick up the slack on. I'm not just going to sit back and be like, that's not my job. I'm the CEO. No, I'm going to get it done because it needs to get done. I've delegated it out, but when there are times when that person can't do it, I'm still going to do it. So no one's exempt from any job. And that is a culture that we have created. Now, here is the difference between culture and a rule, because I know a lot of people are thinking like, well, isn't that just a rule and like no one's going to follow it, right? A culture is something you create from the top down. Your culture, the no one is exempt from a job, for example, that is more of like a value. That is a value proposition. That is something that I put at the top and I say, this is something that is important to us. And so then I create rules underneath that. And it's all about consistency. It's all about your non-negotiable. That is at the heart of what your home's culture is. What is non-negotiable to you? Because many people will say that mutual respect is non-negotiable in their house. But then when there's a whole lot of back talk going on, or a kid says like, I'm not going to do the dishes, I'm not going to do anything, or spouses are sort of being disrespectful to one another, there's no follow through. There's no sitting down. There's no communication. It's just, well, it is what it is, right? What am I going to do about it? So that means that it is negotiable, because if you can negotiate your way out of something, then it means that it's negotiable. And for me, all of those things that I just listed, plus I'm sure some more, are non-negotiable to us, meaning that, as Brene Brown says, my self-worth is not negotiable. I'll negotiate other things. I'm not going to negotiate my self-worth. Brene Brown said that once, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. That's how I feel. I'll negotiate, maybe allowance with my kids. Hey, here's how much I think you should make, and here's how much you think you should make, whatever it is, right? And we just started toying around with allowances recently, but I may negotiate those kind of things, but I'm not going to negotiate respect. I'm not going to negotiate being respected in my home. My husband and I are not going to negotiate that with each other. We're not going to negotiate things like being exempt from a job. It's not going to be negotiable for me. So you have to figure out what that is for you. So things like chores and delegation and spouses and kids that don't help, I'm putting that in quotation marks, these are not problems. These are symptoms. These are symptoms of something larger. The bigger problem is the culture that's been created in the home. So this is where I know that the feathers are going to be ruffled, because no one wants to take responsibility for that. We all like to think that our kids are just jerks, right? Well, my kids don't do chores because they're lazy. My kids don't do chores because they're just, trying to get on my last nerve. My kids make messes all the time because they just love to grate on my nerves. No, they don't. Kids are being kids, and kids do what they are taught. And kids are constantly in a state of learning and relearning and relearning. Now, all of this to say, just because I'm creating this culture in my home does not mean my children are perfect or we are perfect. No, it just means that we are open to constantly learning and relearning and sticking to those values, so that when something comes up, like I don't want to clean up my room, we have consequences to that, because we're not negotiating our way out of the bigger picture, which is that everyone pitches in and that there is a mutual respect that goes along with everything that we do. So this is where a lot of people just don't want to dig in and do this work, because it is deeper work. And it's not just a matter of buying a better chore chart. It's not just a matter of going into a Facebook group and asking people what they should do about their lazy husband. That's the easy thing to do. That's the simple thing. That's what we want. We want the magic pill. We want the, please just tell me what to do so I can fix the problem like that. But these things are not just something you can fix overnight. These are things you have to look into and recognize what has already been created. But here's the beauty: you can change it at any time. You can decide right now that you're going to change whatever culture has been created in your home. All you have to do is recognize it. All you have to do is sit down and say, you know what? There seems to be a lot of disrespect happening from all parties. There seems to be a lack of communication. Maybe we don't even know what our values are. Maybe you sit down with your spouse and you're both like, I don't know. I never even thought about it. That's okay. You don't have to feel judged. You don't have to feel bad about it. You don't have to feel guilty. You should feel proud that you're digging in right now and doing that work. But you have to decide to start. You have to decide to do it, right? So again, the problems that we see in our life are almost always not problems. They're symptoms. So in our case, we have created sort of that culture of help. So yes, I'm going to look into a checklist for my son starting in this new school year. Why? Because we already have the routine down. We already have the culture created. We already know what the priorities are. He already understands the value of helping. He already understands that that's part of his job, that that's part of the teamwork that we've cultivated in our home. That's just part of the deal. So now, creating the checklist and looking into, which way should we do it? How should I create it? Am I going to print it out? Am I going to have it printed? Like, how am I going to do it? All the logistics you can tackle, because the bigger picture has already been created. Here's how I look at it, like in a simple analogy. It really doesn't matter like what you go to the store and buy for ingredients if you don't know what you're cooking. So it would be, here's what people are doing every day. They're like, what do you think is the best chicken broth though? Like, what is the best chicken stock should I do stock or broth? Should I do organic or non-organic? Should I make my own or not make my own? And they're focusing on all the minutia. They don't even know what the recipe is. They don't even know what they're making. They're just worried about all of the little things. Which store should I go to? Which route should I take to the store? Which car should I take on the route to the store? And do you see how we're backtracking and we're trying to work on the minutia of it, all of the small things, but we don't even know what we're making. We don't even know what the recipe is. Focus on the recipe and work your way down. That's what your culture is. It's the recipe of your home. Once you have the recipe, the ingredients are much easier to figure out, and you can tackle all of the minutia. You can go, which way should I drive to that store? Which store should I go to? Because you already know what the recipe is, so you can focus your time on that. But we're doing it backwards, and I'm seeing it every single day. in my audience. I am seeing the questions being asked that are focusing on the which route to the store should I take when they don't even know what they're making for dinner when they go, when they buy the stuff and bring it home. That's the opposite of the way we need to do it. Okay. So you can change this at any time, right? Like I said, you decide right now that you can change it. So how do you get started? There's a few questions that you can ask yourself that have really helped me to shape what I want to create in my home. What are your values? What do you value? Do you value time? Do you value faith? Do you value family? Do you value respect? Do you value adventure? What do you value? There's a million different values. You can actually just go on Google and Google core values, examples of core values, and you'll get like lists of hundreds of core values. If you're stuck, if you're like, I don't really know what I value, start with like 5. Just start with 5 things that you absolutely positively value in your home. And a great thing to do is sit down as a family and do this. Sit down as a family or with your spouse. If they don't want to, start on your own. Don't worry about making it perfect. Don't say, well, I can't do this because my spouse is working weird hours right now and we don't have the time. Then do it yourself. Sit down and figure it out on your own, at least to get started. What are your values? What are your priorities? So your values are sort of like the big all-encompassing thing. So if I said free time is a value for us, then a priority for me is to have my Sundays free to spend time with my kids. That's a priority. That is based on my value. So what are your priorities? What are they week to week, day to day, year to year? Again, you don't have to get crazy with this. You're just getting started. This is just a way to start to create that culture for your home. What do you stand for as a family or as a home? This is one of my favorite questions. What a cool question, right? Have you ever asked this of yourself? It's so empowering. What do you stand for together? So if I looked at my family, the 4 of us, and I looked at like what we stand for, as a family, we really stand for, I was going to say hard work, but that's wrong because I actually don't believe in hard work. I believe in smart work, but we believe in passion. That's the word I'm looking for. We believe in passion, being passionate about what you do, loving the things that you're passionate about and being passionate about the things that you love. Because my husband and I run our own businesses and we do what we absolutely are passionate about and love, passion is something huge for us. And we have children that have really solid passions in life and they may change over time, but it's something that we stand for as a family together, that we stand for going after what you're passionate about and not going with the status quo and having to do what society tells you, but instead running after what you're passionate about in your life. So you can sit and really like dig into that. Ask your kids that question, especially if you have older kids like 9, 10 and up. What a great question to like, what do you stand for? And what do you want to create together? We're all in this together. As families, we're all in this together. And I look at the 4 of us as a team. No matter what, we are here. We are ride or die together. It's the 4 of us sort of against the world, because in our home, I view it as our own little sanctuary. And so if there's discord inside the sanctuary, then it's not a sanctuary anymore. So I want us to create something together. So if you're looking to create your culture, what do you want to create together? Do you want to create more free time? Do you want to create a place of love and peace and calm? Do you want to, on the opposite, do you want to create more adventure? Are you the adventurous type? And maybe you've not been doing that because it's been a negotiable thing for you. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you really want to create a place of faith, of true faith in your home, depending on what your religion is. Whatever it is, you're allowed to do that. You don't have to worry about what anyone else is doing. But in order to work on all of the lower end things, this is the top tier. This is it, guys. Creating that culture is at the top. And again, a lot of people don't want to face that because it means facing up to responsibility. It means taking responsibility for what's already been created. But I am here to tell you that without a doubt, the way that things are functioning in your home is your responsibility. It is your responsibility, and your spouse, whatever adults are in the home, it is your responsibility. It does not mean it is your fault. This is not about blame. So see the difference. Blame is not a part of this. It's all about responsibility, because responsibility means that you can change it. That's what that means. It just means saying, you know what? Here's where we're at right now, but we're going to change this. We are going to turn this ship around. You can turn the ship around at any point, but you have to be willing to get at the wheel and actually do it, however you would steer a ship, because I don't know. The only thing I know about ships is what I've seen with Titanic, and we all know how that ended. So I don't know how to steer a ship, but you can turn it around at any point and not hit the iceberg, okay? So I am so thankful that you listened to this episode. I am so passionate about this. We talk about this quite a bit in Homemaker-ish You, my signature home management course. And it is so important to me, because I go back to it every single time somebody talks about chores, delegation, all the things going on in their house. We view those things as problems when really they're just symptoms of a bigger problem. And we need to focus on fixing the problem, not just throwing medicine at the symptoms. Okay? Thank you so much again for listening. I appreciate you. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. If you want more from Mother Like a Boss, head over to motherlikeaboss.com. You can check out our podcast directory there, courses, all the free stuff we have to offer. Any new classes or workshops or trainings or offerings that I have, that's where you can find everything. I definitely encourage you to go there. And if you're listening, be sure to tag me at Mother Like a Boss on Instagram so I can shout you out. I love to see all of my mama friends on there listening to the podcast. And as always, as I end every single episode, go forth and mother like a boss. Well, this episode may be over, but we don't have to say goodbye. Head over to motherlikeaboss.com for more resources that will help you shift your mindset and put you firmly back in the driver's seat of motherhood. We're all in this together. And if you're on the socials, let's be friends. Follow me on Instagram at motherlikeaboss for daily updates, behind the scenes fun, and weekly live chats. I'll catch you next week.